Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you the battle group overview for the 4th Armoured Division, and this is the first of 4 battle group overviews that I'm going to be doing based on the divisions from the Second Wave DLC. Now it's been a while since the Second Wave DLC actually came out, but I decided that I would wait at the time to do a battle group overview on the divisions because I didn't want to do 2 based on the updates that would likely come to balance the divisions into the game. And I think now that the divisions have been more balanced, it's a good time to do it. So we're starting off with the 4th Armoured today, and we're going to start by looking at the Recon tab. So first of all, for my division, I am choosing the Recon. These are the two man Recon squads with very high optics, very good stealth, pretty simple stuff. They come with a Jeep 30 cal that is really good for pushing salients and holding territory that the Recon otherwise can't. Then I have a squad of Cavalry Scouts in Phase A. Cavalry Scouts are great because they have 10 HE at close range, at the 100 meter range, and they also have a bazooka. Further to that, they are very good stealth, which makes them similar to Ranger Marauders, but a 6-man squad, which is very nice indeed. It would be quite nice if they could get extra veterancy, but I think that's just a balancing thing right there. They also come with the WC-52. This is the American truck with the 50 cal on it, which is decent fire support at max range. Don't let it get too close to infantry though, as infantry can destroy it since it is unarmoured. Other notable units in Phase A are the Bantam. It's a armoured jeep with a 50 cal on it. Haven't really found too much use for it. Generally, I'll be doing the same things with the WC-52 than I would with the Bantam, so that's what I bring the Cavalry Scouts for. Then we have the Recon, and you can bring them in the M20. Again, same thing, just a 50 cal fire support vehicle, but the difference with this Recon squad is that it's just very expensive, and there are a lot of other things that are better spent on in Phase A with the 4th Armoured, so that's why I'm not bringing those Recon. Now in Phase B, there is multiple units of Cavalry Scouts available. We've got the 1-star veterans with the WC-52s again, and basically the same as Phase A, except from with the extra veterancy, which is actually really nice indeed. So great infantry squads, great recon squads. Use them for both sort of purposes. They will definitely help you out. Then we have the M8, and the M8 here, it's okay. It has the 1-star veterancy, but it's relatively expensive for what it does, and there are just other better options to spend points on in Phase B than an M8. Let's move on to the infantry tab. So in the infantry tab, it's a pretty simple start. I've got the armoured leader here. You do need recon in Phase A as infantry, so armoured leader is a good choice, and that will accompany my 2 cards of rifles. Rifles are nice because they are great at both close range and long range. They have 8 HE at both ranges, so at 100 meter range they have 8 HE, and at 400 meter or 300 meter range they have 8 HE, which makes them nice and versatile, and they're pretty hard to kill since they have 12 strength. So good frontline forces for screening your main force, and just sort of sponging hits for you, whilst also dealing some damage to enemy infantry. Then I also have 1 card of the Armored Lmg Rifles, and these Armored Lmg Rifles are great at longer ranges. At 300 meter range they have 12 HE on target, which is pretty damn strong, but if you get close up with these guys, they're not going to do too much, so please bear that in mind. But the main reason that you bring these in Phase A is because they are accompanied by the M3A1 half-track that does have the 50 cal machine gun. Moving on to Phase B, we have the Engineer Leader, which is arguably better than an Armoured Leader, since it does have the 20 HE power grenade and also extra HE on its close range weaponry, the 2 Thompson machine guns there, as you can see in the comparison. So Armoured or Engineered Leader is a really good choice. You can get Armoured Leaders in the M3 half-tracks, but since these guys are simply 20 points and they can kill infantry squads on their own, they are a pretty nice choice for anti-infantry. Then we have engineers to accompany those, basically larger squads with like 9 men plus the grenades or the satchel charges. And then I have one card of the Armored Rifles, and these are your standard armored infantry with not great HE, although 6 HE at close combat's okay. They have a bazooka. That is their main sort of role, is they are basically there to provide some presence, and they just sort of are a risky unit to ignore because they're that bazooka, and you can get caught out by them if you are on the Axis side of things. So quite nice. They come with an M3 half-track that is pretty useful for fire support as well. Now, other units to note are, of course, I've already mentioned the Armoured Leader in the M3 half-track and the M1917, which is a heavy machine gun with 8 HE. Now, this is 600 meter range, which is the only reason that I'm not really bringing it. If these were 800 meter range, I would definitely consider taking them over even the Armored Rifles, because they do still come in the M3A1 half-track, which again has another 50 cal on it. 50 cal 800 meter range is just really, really nice compared to this. I wish it was 800 meter range, but considering the barrel, you can probably realize why not. But that's pretty much the infantry tab. You just want to be having your rifles there to sort of sponge shots, and then engineers and armored rifles late game depending on what you need. Moving into the tank tab. Things are pretty simple in Phase A. Take the M4 Abrams. This should come with the division in the second wave DLC, so yeah, just pick up Abrams. Really, really solid choice. Was nerfed in that they made him more expensive, but this is one of the best and most used aces in the game at the moment, I believe. And just really, really nice tank to have in accompaniment with the M4 105s here in the support tab in Phase A. Now in Phase B, you do have incredibly cheap M5A1 Stuarts available, but I actually don't use them myself. I opt for the M4A1 76mm, just because they have the 1200 meter range with the 13 AP, which is good enough to kill, you know, Panzer IVs from out of range, and also maybe challenge some other tanks at closer range, because they do have the improved aim time, I believe, and that means they are pretty damn potent at close range. So that's just all I have in Phase B. There are other options. You can bring in the M4A1 cards with 4 M4A1s for 130 points apiece. This can be a pretty nice choice since the price of the M4 does match up to the B skirmish phase, and yeah, that's something to consider for sure. Then into Phase C, your income stays the same, so again, more M4A1s are a solid choice, but I'm going to be opting for the veteran Rhinos with the extra front armor, just because they can be pretty damn meaty at close range and really serve you well in the bocage type maps. So yeah, that's good about the M4A1. Just this extra front armor allows them to get close range onto those AT guns and help you take them out, as well as just destroy infantry with the 30 cals and the 50 cals. More M4A1 76s are also brought in Phase C, just to bolster and support Hellcats, which are in the anti-tank tab, but we'll get there soon enough. Let's go to the support tab. Now in the support tab, I think it's very important to bring in at least one M4 105, just because they are really, really useful for killing off AT guns from out of range. You can do the fire position trick onto 1200 meter range AP units, or you can do the, or just fire straight at the 1000 meter range units from out of range. And they have 15 HE, very, very good at taking out support units like IGs and PAC 38s and all that good stuff. They're also fantastic at destroying infantry due to the 50 cal and the 230 cals that it has. So one of these, close range proximity with a bunch of infantry, is going to absolutely demolish it. Now that's another thing that's good for with the M8 cavalries that you can get in Phase A. Unfortunately for myself, I don't really find much of a use for the M8 cavalries, although I have seen them used very well in the past. You can get the ones with 1-star experience, which will be 2-star with a command car with them, and they can be pretty damn devastating, again, just because they have the 50 cal and 30 cal plus like a main gun, and that main gun can often be enough to kill a lot of Phase A tanks and threats that the Axis can put up early on. And if you can kill a tank, for example, with 65 points worth of M8 cavalries, then you're in a pretty good spot. These M8 Scots, honestly, I feel like they're redundant, quite simply because you can get the M4105s, so why wouldn't you? I do bring in one card of the M20 commands for some extra command, and I also bring in a GMC in Phase A to reload my mortars, following up with the M30's cargoes in Phase C to reload my heavier artillery. Now in Phase B you can get M8 commands, which are very interesting indeed, and definitely have their uses. Honestly, it's kind of tempting to like drop out some M20 commands and put in the M8 commands in Phase B, but yeah, it's just they're quite weak, and I just find that I don't have too much luck with the M8s in general in Steel Division, so that's just not my favoured unit, but definitely I could see why people would take them. Then I'm just supplementing more M4105s in Phase B. You don't need any extra veterancy, just more availability, and that's exactly what you get. You can also get a second card of the M30's cargoes in Phase C, but that would be completely overkill. Let's move on to the anti-tank tab. Now this is what the 4th Armoured is all about. Hellcat, 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 Hellcat. That is the name of the game for the 4th Armoured, and often you can form these unstoppable death balls where you have so many Hellcats that not even Befell Panthers can stop you. You just stun them to death with the amount of firepower you're putting down range, and it works out very well. But let's start off by talking about the units in Phase A available. You have the Bazookas here, 20 points in a Jeep, nice for holding choke points where you would otherwise not have tanks that strive at longer ranges, so that's what the Bazookas are good for. I used to bring them in the M20s, but I just found that they were too expensive and didn't allow me to spend points on other things. M1 guns are kind of pointless in Phase A if you're going to be bringing in things like Hellcats. Hellcats just do such a better job of managing AT early on because of their extra range. So let's talk about the Hellcats now. What makes the Hellcats so good? Well, it's their range advantage in Phase A that is very helpful indeed. It's their cheap cost for what they put out, and their really, really impressive speed. So they can take engagements, fire a shot, and then like zoom out of the way very, very quickly, and it makes them pretty damn hard to kill, honestly. They have just enough armor to survive some shots from lower AP units. Higher AP units like Panthers tend to one-shot them still. But yeah, these are pretty damn hard to kill. But the 6 accuracy is very, very nice with a 13 AP power and works out very, very well against most targets. So yeah, that's one thing that's great. As you move into Phase B, getting more availability of the Hellcats is very important, I feel. Just because if you can savour your M18 Hellcats from Phase A and accompany them with the ones from Phase B, alongside maybe some command and maybe an M4105, it's a pretty horrific combo for the enemy. Like, they can't deal with it and can be extremely strong. Now, M18 Hellcats do have their weaknesses. They can be bombed because they are open top, and they can be hit by artillery, again, because they are open top. So if you use something like a Panzerwerfer on a group of Hellcats, it can kill a couple of them sometimes, which is very nice indeed, and is quite a cheap way of cleaning up Hellcats. I think the main issue with Hellcats comes from people not necessarily knowing how to play against them, and it's just a matter of making sure that you ambush them and pick them off slowly but surely, and eventually your 4th Armoured opponent's going to run out of steam, and that's when you can quite simply roll them over. One thing that I do find with the 4th Armoured is if you lose all of your Hellcats, you are pretty much doomed, because there isn't much else that really puts up a fight against late game armour of the Axis. Now I do have some M5 guns here, quite simply for the task of ambushing. They do have the 1-star veterancy, and so with a command you get the 2-star M5 gun, which is pretty decent for picking off Panthers and Tigers, or even King Tigers on occasion. So that's pretty much the AT tab. M18 Hellcats are really what gets the job done in this division. As for anti-air. Anti-air is an odd one in this division. You definitely need it, because like I said before, Air Force is one way of dealing with M18 Hellcats with things like bombers. So yeah, M15 CGMC in Phase B is going to be my choice, 100 points apiece, have the 18 HE power that they can put out, and often with just a couple of these you can shoot down fighters pretty easily. The M15 CGMCs also join me in Phase C for extra availability, but other choices would be maybe MGMCs in Phase B for more availability at a cheaper cost. So that's really up to you. The thing is with the MGMC is it's got a nice amount of HE, only 2 less than the CGMC, but it works all at 800 meter range rather than the extra 200 meter range on the 37mm autocannon that can really stop enemy bombers from dropping their payload before you pin them down. So yeah, that's a choice you got to make. If you can keep the MGMCs further up without them being killed, then that would definitely be a choice. In the artillery tab, we have 2 M21 MMCs in Phase A, and that is pretty staple, honestly. I don't see many people use the 60mm mortars in the 4th Armoured. The M21s are just so much better. They have a decent amount of frontal armour, which keeps them alive against counter battery, and they can just put down a lot of firepower onto enemy AT guns that would otherwise kill your units as you advance. I think the great thing about the M21 is it just deals with anything that's out of your direct line of fire that the Hellcats and the M4105s can't otherwise deal with. So that's the beauty of the M21 MMC in the 4th Armoured. You can also bring in the M4A1OP here, which has 155mm off-map accompanying it, but generally I wouldn't say that it's very useful in Phase A, since there often aren't many units that are clumped up enough to make good use out of it. Also, it doesn't have very high lethality, and it doesn't have a main gun to use because it's a radio tank. Then we have the M7 HMCs in Phase B. Honestly, an interesting choice that I've been considering swapping for the M12s. They have a higher rate of fire, 2 round per minute rate of fire higher, but they have less than half the HE, or actually probably just half, sorry, the HE of the M12 GMC. They can provide smoke, which is also a benefit at longer range. But that's one thing they do lack in comparison to the M12 GMC is the range in general. But 2,400 meters is generally enough to be out of range of counter battery from the Axis side of things. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt, really. My preference is the M12. It gets the job done. It hits the mark. It's pretty damn accurate, honestly, for the size of the gun it is. So yeah, it's just my preference. It's quite expensive though. So bear that in mind. I've got more of those in Phase C if I ever need them. They're generally good for if you want to clean up things like Pack 43s that people are spamming late game, or even just trying to dislodge tanks that are like hiding behind tree lines that are trying to maybe ambush you or just be present and stop you from moving forwards because of where they are. So just dislodging them and getting the kills onto them is pretty important sometimes, and M12s often have the HE high enough to do the damage. Now you definitely need to use supply with these because they only come with 10 rounds, so make sure you have them reloaded, or at least some supply ready to come with them. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be a kind of waste of 200 points if you can't reload them. Right, let's move on to the air tab. Now the air tab in the 4th Armoured is quite interesting indeed. You do have some really interesting units like these F5As. They are like unarmed lightnings basically, which are recon planes. They're very, very fast, but yeah, without their armaments, I don't think they're really worth bringing for their cost. And the other things we can bring in Phase A are B-26B Marauders. And I guess these are well known in the Steel Division community now, due to the amount of memes there are about these. But just in general, they're fantastic for strafing enemy AT guns, enemy mortars, enemy infantry, and they're incredibly hard to shoot down, especially in Phase A. It's often that like a fighter will come in to challenge a B-26B in Phase A, and they will actually be forced to fall back by the 50 cals mounted on the back and on the top of the aircraft. So yeah, pretty awesome units indeed, and you can bring in 2 of those in Phase A. So that's what I'm doing here. 1-star veterancy is enough. You can also bring in the 2-star veteran one in Phase B instead of one of the Phase A ones if you like. Other units that you have access to are all Lightnings. You have the P-38 Lightning Fighter variant. You have a 215HE bomber variant. And then you have more fighters in Phase C with the veterancy. Further to that, there is the B-26B bomber variant, but that has 25 HE barrel bombs. Really good for stunning units, not necessarily going to kill them though. You'd need something on the ground to clean that up. But yeah, that's about it. That's the 4th Armoured in a nutshell. Let's just have a quick talk about how you'd use these units in synergy with one another. So in general, it's going to be, you're just going to have Cavalry Scouts spread about, preferably ahead of your units, and finding you the targets that you need. Then where you can't be hidden or whatever, you want to use rifles, because rifles will be that screen for your main line, and they will secure things like tree lines for you, or at least reveal other units in those tree lines so that you can advance without having to worry about being ambushed. Then you have the really nice combo in Phase A, that's the M4 Abrams with the M4 105mm. That's a really, really nice combination indeed that can push very, very hard early on. The other combination is the M4 105 with the M18 Hellcats. But honestly, what you can do is bring in the Abrams, the M4 105, and if you need the Hellcats for anything else, then you can bring those in afterwards because they are relatively cheap in comparison. Then in Phase A as well, you have the M21s to support any tank push you make with the M4s, and furthermore the B-26B Marauders that almost fill the same role as the M21 MMC, but tend to also hold the sky for you as well, which is rather interesting. It's kind of like AA in Phase A, in the fact that you can force enemy fighters to fall back pretty easily. Then moving into Phase B, it's just a matter of reinforcing yourself with more Hellcats, more M4s if you need them. Bring in M4A 176mm to provide you with more command. And then you have things like the M20 command for your infantry. One thing that you could do maybe is like drop the engineer leader and just give yourself more infantry availability in the later phases if you find you need it. But I find this is quite a nice balance that I have going at the moment. Moving into Phase C, it's just the continual burn through of M18 Hellcats. Reinforce yourself with M4A1s as well. Make sure you have the artillery to kill off any threats that you spot with your Cavalry Scouts, and that's pretty much it. Once you start to get low on M18 Hellcats, you will find you start to struggle, because once those Hellcats are gone, there's a lot less threat to the Axis armor, and you'll find that they will be a lot more aggressive because of that. So that's pretty much it for the 4th Armoured. Hopefully you guys agree or like what I've said and found it useful. If you disagree and you have other thoughts on the 4th Armoured, feel free to leave them in the comments. I always enjoy the discussion that occurs on these videos based on what units people take and why. So yeah, feel free to put your reasoning for different units in the description. But that's all for now, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.